Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 1990's Represent. We're still in our fourth cycle of 1990, talking about a movie on this episode. And this episode, we're talking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first live-action film featuring the heroes in a half shell. Really a good, fun time. I remember seeing this when it came out. We had it on VHS as well. And then, of course, the 1991, we got Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Secret of the Ooze. But we're talking about the original 1990 film in this episode. I watched it again recently, and it was still a lot of fun. Like, there's definitely a lot of really good action in this, like pretty cool, like fights and things like that, and a very much darker kind of tone than the cartoon. I think a lot of people went in kind of to the movie thinking it was going to be like the cartoon, and they ended up kind of being a little bit surprised with how kind of violent and just kind of like gritty the movie actually was. So like I started off watching the cartoon, playing with the toys and stuff like that, and I think before this movie came out, I want to say or maybe it was the Christmas before, so like the Christmas of 1989. I think my parents got me some of the trade paperbacks for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comics, like collected issues or whatever. I think I had like 3 or 4 just books of these comics, and the comics were really violent as well. Like I remember, it's just a much grittier story. Like originally, it was quite violent, quite over the top. I remember there's like a scene where you see the Mousers going in, and you see them kind of just like chomping stuff, and there's like blood everywhere. So the original comics were obviously much more violent. When they did the cartoon, they significantly toned it down. And I think this movie has kind of it's like a middle ground. It's not as violent as the comic books, but it's definitely more violent than the cartoon. Like Shredder in this movie is like absolutely kind of just crazy. Like some of his lines are just incredibly savage. Like there's a line where they've captured Splinter, and he's like chained up. He's kind of like holding like chained up to like a fence or something like that in like their hideout. And Shredder like puts his claws like under Splinter's neck, and he's like answer these questions, and Splinter's obviously not going to say anything. So then you see Shredder just walk away, and Shredder's like, fine, and hang there until you die. And it's just like some of his lines are just incredibly savage. So again, like I said, I rewatched it recently and had a blast watching it. Had been a very long time since I've seen it. Like I said, I saw this in theaters when it came out, and then I saw the second one in theaters when that came out. The third one, by the time the third one came out, I was kind of like losing interest in the Turtles. So I think I remember like maybe renting that one on like VHS or whatever they like go to like feudal Japan or whatever it is. Ninja Turtles 3. I think that was that was 1993. I think is when that came out. But this one is definitely probably my favorite out of the three. TMNT, Secret of the Ooze has a lot going for it, but I definitely like the kind of more gritty, darker tone of this one. But we have some notes here about the movie. Then we're going to get to the plot and all that kind of stuff. So here we go. So Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, first released March 30th, 1990. Like I said, has some of the graphic novels. I think I still have them somewhere. I need to dig those out because I had some. I think there was one that dealt with like Cerebus. I think it was part of that whole thing. I don't remember exactly like which book that was like the fourth one I bought. But has some of the trade paperbacks. Jim Henson's Creature Company worked on this movie, and it was one of the last things he worked on. And he was just saying that the puppets and the suits that they made for the Turtles were just some of the most advanced things he had ever worked on. Like they had like various like animatronics going. There was some computerized stuff with it, so like the mouse could move. Like the actual the turtle, like the costume design in this movie for them specifically is really good. It actually kind of holds up. They look kind of silly now, but it definitely is kind of a very like a feat of engineering to have these turtle suits do what they do in the movie, like move around and speak and have their mouths move. It's just kind of very, very cool. Like a lot, like the craft behind it is still really good. This movie grossed $202 million off of a $13.5 million budget, so it made a ton of money. Some of the, like I said, this movie kind of floats a middle ground between the cartoon and the comics. So a lot of the elements from the comics are in here, as well as a lot of elements from the cartoon. I think in the comics they all wear red, so they all have the red bandana or eye masks. In the cartoon, they each got a different color of their masks, and then they carry those eye mask colors over into the film. I think April O'Neil is like a lab technician in some of the comics, and then in the cartoon she's a news reporter, and they ended up using the news reporter portion of it. So they kind of picked and chose various elements from the comics to use, as well as various elements from the cartoons. Apparently, a lot of studios, I didn't know this, so according to my research, a lot of studios actually passed on making this movie. They were thinking it was going to be a box office disappointment, even though the cartoon and the toy line at the time were very popular. So some of those studios that actually ended up passing on this movie were Disney, Columbia, Universal, MGM, Orion, Fox, Warner Brothers, Paramount, or Warner Brothers and Paramount. I think Warner Brothers now owns New Line Cinema, so I think like they eventually ended up getting the rights to it. But a lot of those studios ended up just passing on it. It went to New Line Cinema, and they would go on like 10 years later to do like the Lord of the Rings films and stuff like that. And at the time, they were kind of a much smaller like production company. But now New Line is like pretty big now, and I think like they definitely did some big, huge films like the Lord of the Rings trilogy and all that kind of stuff. One funny thing, we're about to get into the plot. One funny thing about this movie I did not notice the first time I see it, so because I wouldn't even have known who this person was. But Sam Rockwell is in this film, and like he has like maybe 3 or 4 lines of dialogue. But he is I think he's credited as like head thug or like lead thug or something like that. And he's the guy who's talking to a bunch of like new like foot. They're not quite Foot Clan members yet, but they're like in like the crime. There's like the crime ring, and then there you could graduate from that to be like a full on like Foot Clan member. A lot of the other people are just doing like petty crime. They're like stealing stuff and like burglaries and that kind of thing. But he's talking to some new recruits, and he's like, "You guys can do anything you want in here. If you want to do something, just do it. If you want to like do like whatever, just do whatever you want." And the guy goes to Sam Rockwell's character. He's like, "Hey, you got cigarettes?" And Sam Rockwell, like, he pulls out 2 cartons of cigarettes. He's like regular or menthol. And then he's got like some more lines closer toward the end of the film. But just an interesting thing because he's gone on to like win an Academy Award. He's been in some just amazing films like Moon. If you haven't seen Moon, and that's probably like one of my favorite Sam Rockwell films. He's just in a ton of great movies. And this is one of his like maybe his first or second role. Like it was very early on in his career. Anyhow, we're now going to jump into the plot of this film. So it's 1990. It's New York City. It's still very gritty looking. It's probably before like they got kind of like the city cleaned up. So it still like has like this really gritty kind of look to it, which I really like in this film. It reminds me a lot of New York films set in the 70s and 80s, like Taxi Driver. Not quite as like obviously it was over the top as Taxi Driver, but like that style of like New York. So there's a whole bunch of crime waves going on. I vividly remember there's one scene where you see a guy delivering something, and the back of his truck is completely full. He goes to like deliver the package. The guy signs for it, and when he comes back, the entire truck is empty. I vividly remember that scene, and that scene happens very early in the film. So the Foot Clan, or like the crime ring, basically, because like I said, they can kind of graduate up and to be actual like ninjas or whatever they are. But they're going around the city just like stealing stuff and doing all like they're stealing like wallets. You see a scene where like there's like somebody hands a wallet to another guy who hands a wallet to another guy, stuff like that. There's like a TV that gets like stolen off of like a fire escape. So we're doing a bunch of these crimes. April O'Neil is covering these crimes, and her boss is telling her to basically like, hey, like don't like cover these crimes, like like he's like just like let it go. And she obviously doesn't, so she ends up kind of like ruffling feathers with like the like chief of police or something like that. They have a bunch of you see the turtles come out and they like fight somebody or fight like a group of these thugs. Yeah, because she's leaving the studio after doing like her news report or whatever it is, and she gets rolled up by some thugs, and the Ninja Turtles come out and they like basically dispatch these guys. Raphael loses one of his sais because I think he throws it at like a lamp and it like breaks the light and he forgets to get it. Like April O'Neil actually recovers it, but they tie these guys up. April goes and like does like to like she gets like the police are like helping her out. The turtles disappear back to the sewer. Raphael is upset that he lost his sign. Splinter's like, just let it go then. They're kind of like arguing about that. They order pizza, and this is when they drop the pizza through like the sewer grate. And he's like, it's like 33 and an eighth, and the guy's like an eighth, and they put the money through the thing. He's like, hey, this is only a 10. It's supposed to be $13. And he's like, something is divine, but never pay full price for late pizza or whatever it is. So they get the pizza, they carve it up, and this is like when the slice lands on Splinter's head. He's like, you crazy kids. Raphael goes out to a movie. I think you see like Critters or something. He comes out, and there's some stuff going on where he's like fighting off some like thugs, and then we get introduced to Casey Jones. He fights Casey Jones. Casey Jones is just kind of like very over the top, and I remember reading, doing the research for this video, that his character was basically a parody of like all the other like vigilante kind of like comic book and film characters up to that point. He carries around like a bag of like sporting equipment, so he's got like a baseball bat, he's got a cricket bat or whatever they call it. I think it's a cricket bat. Cricket bat. He eventually uses a golf club at one point, even though I don't. He hits a guy with a golf club at like later in the movie, but like he's like, I don't think he normally carries around golf clubs because he hits a guy. And he says like. He's like, I'll never say golf was a sport game, a dull game ever again. So they fight each other, and on the way back, basically like the turtles go and do some stuff. They get trailed by the Foot. Shredder at this point is also told like the Foot Clan to like go after April because she's like kind of like getting like she's like uncovering all the stuff about the Foot Clan, so they send people after her. The turtles end up rescuing her and bringing her back to the kind of like their hideout. That's when they get followed by the Foot Clan, and then from there, basically they go out to do something. They're basically just hanging around at like April's like apartment. But when they go back to the sewer, Splinter's been kidnapped. So Splinter's now being held hostage at like the kind of like the hangout. And this hangout reminds me a lot of the hangout at RoboCop 2. Where it's very funny where like all these like street gangs, these like teenage street gangs, are hanging out in gigantic arcades with like this one they have like their own like little skate park going through it. They're playing like poker and they're doing all this kind of stuff. At one point, Shredder comes out and is like they're initiating like the newest members of the Foot Clan. Tetsu or I forget the character's name. He's the guy who's like Ninja Vanish. He's like Shredder's like second in command kind of guy. He's training with a guy, and the guy like bows to him, and that guy kicks the guy in the face, and he's like, "Never lower your eyes to an enemy." I just love that line. But that's kind of like when they start getting new members. Like the Foot Clan eventually finds out where the turtles are kind of like staying with April, and Raphael's on their roof, and he just gets absolutely destroyed, like basically like almost gets beaten almost to death, basically. The kind of apartment building and antique store that she lives above gets burned down. So they end up going out to like the farm, and like Casey Jones follows them. And during this thing, they're doing like a lot of like reflecting, and like Raphael is like recovering still. He eventually like wakes up, and they kind of like Splinter comes to them in like a vision, and he's like, hey, like they're like, hey, Splinter's alive. We've got to go back and get him. And they go basically go to rescue Splinter. They fight off a bunch of the Foot Clan, and then they fight Shredder and get basically destroyed by him on this rooftop. This fight is very reminiscent to the fight in the comics. In the comics, though, like it's pretty brutal because I think they like beat Shredder, and I think like Leonardo like hands a katana to him. He's like, hey, like you can restore your honor by committing seppuku, and he's like, hands him, and that's when Shredder pulls a grenade out, and I think like they knock him off the roof or something. But they're constantly, and then there's this guy named Danny throughout the movie who basically is a like a little like street kid, but he's like has a change of heart. He's the one that basically helps um, rescue Splinter from the Foot Clan. He's like partly stealing stuff. He's the son of April's boss, and he's like getting caught up in the whole like Foot Clan kind of thing as well. But they fight Shredder. Splinter appears. He also has like the backstory about kind of like he's like, hey, like I was. And they changed Splinter's origin story from the show. I think it's more the origin is more from the comic, but like in the show, I think he was a human that got turned into a rat by messing with the ooze, and then the turtles got big. In the movie, he's a rat that basically got stuck in New York City in the sewer and found like this ooze, and then like the turtles, and then the turtles mutated, and he mutated to be more like of a human, like a humanoid rat kind of thing. But he goes on how he's like his master and Shredder were basically rivals in Japan, and they were fighting over the love of this woman. Basically, like Splinter's master gets killed, but then Splinter like claws Shredder's face, or I think it's like Rokusaki is the guy's name initially, or something like that. He claws his face, so he's got these scars. And then on the rooftop, after the turtles are done like getting like beat up by Shredder, Splinter shows up, and Shredder has like a spear. He's got his mask off at this point. He charges him with the spear, kind of like he's like raw, like runs up, and Splinter, I think like they do a thing where they kind of like foreshadow to it very quickly. Michelangelo's nunchucks get like stuck on like a ladder, and I think that's what Splinter uses to. He basically wraps him around the spear and spins it around so Shredder is hanging off of the building by the spear, and then he throws like Shredder tries to throw like a knife at like Splinter, and I think Splinter catches it and just drops Shredder into a garbage truck, and then you see Casey Jones walk by. He's like, "Oops!" and like hits a button and then, or pulls a lever, and gets crushed in the trash machine. Basically, like a lot of the Foot Clan basically kind of have told the police where their headquarters are, because like they kind of ended up like siding with Splinter on it. So that's kind of where the movie wraps up. So just a really fun movie. Like it's like not very long. It's like an hour and a half. I ended up watching it on Amazon. It's not on like any of the straight up streaming services where you can watch it. It was like I paid like the $3 to rent it or whatever it was. But I had a really good time watching it, and I remember like just seeing this in theaters back when it came out, and had a good time. And this reminded me of just it's just a fun movie. If you're into the Ninja Turtles, definitely check it out. That's going to do it for this video here. We'll be back again in a few days with another computer or video game. No idea what that game's going to be just yet, but we'll be back with that, and then we'll be jumping back into 1991 after that. But that's going to do it for now. So remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again next time. Thanks again for watching. Take care and have a good one. See ya.